Never mix politics and religion. Never talk about politics and religion. Well, to that I say bollocks. We need to do both. We need to talk about both. We need to mix both where necessary, and we need to be unafraid to do so. We need to do that so that we have the ability to talk about both, to understand different perspectives, to understand differences of opinions, and to communicate without resorting straight to immediate dismissal and name calling. And there's really only one side of the aisle I'm looking at with when I make those comments. Seems to me one side's very happy to sit down and have a conversation, and the other is not. Welcome. This is Christianity Out Loud, and my name is Steve. Thanks for watching. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are doing so. Before we get started, why don't you go over and check out the website. That's christianityoutloud.com.au. Yes, I am Australian. I would like to keep that aspect of what I'm doing, that Australian aspect, a little bit related, so I kept the .au, so just a little bit quirky, just a few extra letters to type. It's got links to all of these that have been done previously. It's got links to other articles that I've written. It's got links to some merchandise, to the book, Bread of Life, Simple Gospel. It's got links to all of the social media that you can follow me on, join in the conversation, build the community. It even has a link to support if you so choose to do so. If you think this is a worthwhile investment in building culture, then you can do that as well. So, like, subscribe, share, all of those fun things. So the Australian federal election that we had only a few weeks ago, we voted a few weeks ago, and it was finally called, I think, the Labor Party will manage to form a majority in their own right. I think that news came through today. They're pretty confident that Labor will get to 77 seats, I think it is. Doesn't matter. They'll get a majority anyway, which means they can have the Speaker of the House come out of their party without it affecting the majority in the lower house. I found the reaction or the response after this election quite interesting. After the 2019 election, where the pseudo intellectual celebrities, who I care very little for, described Australia as backwards and racist, and you name the predictable insult, it was used. And of course, why did they use all of these predictable insults? Well, when the Conservative Party here in Australia won against every poll prediction, I think it's going back a few years, and against all of the odds and every other prediction, comes as a bit of a shock. And we all know people on that side of the persuasion are not very, they're prone to fragility, so, must be because everybody's racist or some sort of phobic. You know the drill. But not so this time. Labor Party will get the majority. And the reaction from the Conservatives, the right, the social medias, all of that was, I would say, not surprisingly, quiet. It's almost like that group of people has a respect for the democratic process and will respect the result. Another group of people won't. That's not always the case, though. And Christians pointing the finger a little bit at you here. And I'll lump myself in, not because I just don't like any politician or any government, so that's me. But I am Christian, obviously, so I'll lump myself in there. We tend not to be very good at accepting a government that we didn't vote for, or that we don't like, or that's not on our side of the fence, or you name it. And I also find that a little bit strange, being that here in Queensland at least, I had all these Christians, those very same Christians, telling me that I needed to obey every COVID restriction implemented by the very government that it was very unlikely that they voted for. So, there you go. I mean, either we believe governments are instituted by God or we don't. Doesn't mean we obey them all of the time. What do I mean by that? Go back and watch an old video about obeying government. What I mean is, even if you look at Old Testament, for example, Saul was actually appointed by God. He was not the leader that the people needed. He was the leader that the people wanted. So they got him. And that ended pretty badly, if my Old Testament memory serves me correctly. But still instituted by God. So what do we do over the next 3 years then? And we have 3-year election cycles, so safe to assume the next election cycle will be sometime in 2025. I really do get the arguments for making it a 4-year cycle, not a 3. But then that's federally, where there is a Senate that can at least, there's a check and a balance there. Next 3 years, what do we do? Well, the Prime Minister-elect, well, not Prime Minister-elect, he is the Prime Minister. I mean, he has publicly supported the Religious Discrimination Bill, as it stands, as is. So that's a good thing. That is a good thing. He and other senior Labor ministers have publicly stated that Christians and other religious denominations have no reason to be sceptical of their governing, although I will reserve any opinion I form of that until later down the track, as I would do with any government. So I am frustrated at the amount of influence that the Greens have. They're our minor sort of extreme left-wing party over here. And I say extreme left-wing because they're just not environmentalist anymore. They really have no idea of economics, and I would suggest have no genuine interest in environmental matters. How do I reach that conclusion? The only seats they won were actually inner city seats. The inner city Melbourne, I think they got 2 in Melbourne, and they've won 2 inner city seats here in Brisbane. And you would know by the nature of a city, it's pretty hard to mitigate the environmental impact that those sorts of structures have, because they're already there and it's already been built. So little can be done to mitigate the environmental factors there. But what we have is then people who are representing inner city regions, inner city seats rather, dictating or holding the balance of power regarding policies that will directly impact the local economies of regions that rely on mining. So what do we do with that? I don't know whether that's right. And their idea of economic management seems to be just tax the rich and give everything away for free. They care more for equity rather than meritocracy. Yeah, I said equity, not equality. It's equity they care for. And we'll say things like, we need more women in this position. I've never understood that. Why not just get the best person for the job? Who cares? Whether it's man, woman, I don't care. I've had male bosses, I've had female bosses, I've had great male bosses, I've had great female bosses. It doesn't matter. If you're good at your job, you're good at your job. It makes no difference. They'll campaign for gay and transgender rights under the guise of equality, but really will oppose things like a religious discrimination bill, and they were quite a loud voice in opposition to that bill, because how dare a Christian school, for example, discriminate against someone not of that faith applying to work at that school. I mean, it doesn't make much sense, but anyway. They will attempt to silence Christian voices. They're pro-abortion, very much so. They're anti-traditional family. They're pro-Islam. They're pro-euthanasia. They're very much anti-school chaplain program. They are pro-environment, which I do agree with. And that's regardless of your opinion on climate change. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I know nothing about it. I don't know. I don't know anything about climate change. Okay. I don't know the impact of the Industrial Revolution on the environment. But having said that, I did see a very compelling perspective presented a little while ago, a few months ago, that said the reason why the current climate temperatures are rising is actually because we are still at the very, very end of the last ice age. So we're still exiting that period, which is why the temperatures are still rising. Bennett, I'm no expert. I'm just saying that was a compelling, as my chair nearly breaks and sends me backwards. That was a fairly compelling perspective. So all I know is I don't know nothing about climate change, but I do think we could be looking at sustainable farming. We could be looking at sustainable living, investing in public transport. I've got no dramas with that. Looking at renewable energy, forcing people onto renewable energy, I don't think is the way to go, but we could certainly explore the new technology and try and make it cheaper and whatnot. No dramas with that. But other than that, they're dangerously close to basically a Marxist group. And I think for that reason they should be avoided. Unfortunately, they will hold the balance of power. So we will see how that goes. And let's see what the next 3 years brings. I mean, all we can do is pray for our leaders and hope that they seek and listen to God's guidance in leading the country. So there you go. But I do think on a little bit more of a somber note, it would be remiss of me to not mention the events of Texas. I'm not going down the route of they need stricter gun laws. That's a very easy argument. I think it's a very cheap argument. And I'm yet to see a criminal that's ever been really truly worried by the enforcement of stricter laws. Do what you like. A criminal is a criminal. So, secondly, the issue is not guns. It's just not. It's a social, it's a cultural issue at play, and it's been eroding at what's been the structure of society and really the structure of everything for the past however many thousand years. Look up the numbers. Look up pre-1970, those sorts of events. Next to non-existent. Okay, they didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was extremely rare. Okay, but they seem to have increased fairly exponentially post 1970s. Well, there's your answer. What's happened politically, culturally, socially since then? And I would also note, it doesn't appear to be girls or young women committing these sorts of acts, does it? So how do we get to this point? Well, let's tarnish all masculinity as toxic. Okay? Let's make genders interchangeable through policies like gay marriage, okay, where the family unit's no longer seen as mother and father, as well as a transgender movement, okay, which has continued the erosion of men, okay. Let's just actually destroy the family unit of father, mother, children. Let's do that. Now, we do that a number of different ways. We do that by encouraging single parenthood, encouraging single motherhood, financially rewarding them. Things like Believe All Women. And let's just remove father figures from a child's life in issues like custody. So I just mean Believe All Women in regards to sexual assault. As in, let's just believe that the mother always has the child's best interest at heart and the father is just something who is disposable. Let's devalue meritocracy completely and hard work, devalue meritocracy and hard work by implementing things like diversity quotas. Let's actually celebrate mental illness by allowing 5-year-olds to undergo gender reassignment surgeries and chemical transitions. Let's drug our young children into a complete stupor for ADHD, autism, ASD, depression, etc. Instead of examining issues of diet and the significant increase of use of electronic devices in education. On that, before I go to the next point, I went to Japan, spent a bit of time in a Japanese school. Not a lot, about a week. And this is one of the most technologically advanced countries on Earth. Technology is integrated everywhere. And this was an expensive private school. The teachers wrote on chalkboards and students wrote with pencils in workbooks. ne'er a laptop or iPad to be seen. How refreshing. Let's lock children in their homes for the best part of 2 years. Let's remove their social support network. Let's force them and their teachers and their adult influencers to wear masks, stunting education and personal development. And lastly, and I think most importantly, let's continue the crusade to completely remove God from society. (1970s) onwards. Pre-1970s, these things didn't happen. Post-1970s, all of those things I've just mentioned, and we see an exponential increase in these sorts of behaviours. All of them, all of those things come out of the academic institutions, and all of those come out of the academic left, depending which side you are. So to that I say, dear leftists, I hold you wholly responsible for those sorts of events that occur. And until you're prepared to make some wholesale changes to society, until you are prepared to re-embrace traditional values, until you are prepared to respect masculinity, roles of fathers, and the roles of men in society, it's just going to carry on. I mean, to say I pray for those families just seems so shallow and so token. What do you do? What do you do? In times like these, all we can do is pray and hope that out of these tragic circumstances, that somehow God will be glorified. So until next week, God bless.